So welcome everyone to another Ascension Roundtable. This week, we are going to discuss contrast within us and darkness. I have really been working a lot on releasing darkness and contrast and doing some healing work in my past life sessions. And I noticed that a lot of darkness needs to be brought to the surface or awareness so that it can be healed. Because if we do not acknowledge it or look at it, because I know it can be sometimes scary, it doesn't allow for us to heal it or transmute it to love or whatever you would like to say in your own mind around this. So once again, we have our lovely guests that we're going to go around and say hello. Kimberly, are we doing a sound alchemy session as usual?
If you would like me to, it'd be my pleasure.
Okay, great. So we'll definitely, so I think we're getting our format where we introduce, yes, Roxanne.
Oh no, I was waving at my neighbor. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I always have my doors open and stuff, so yeah.
I love it. I love it. All right, so we're going to go around and introduce everyone. Once again, just in case you don't know us, again, my name is Isabelle Zimmerman. I'm a channeler, I'm a psychic, I'm a teacher, an ascension teacher, I'm a full-time ascension teacher, and you can always find more information about me and my lovely guests on attractingwisdom.com. All right, so how about Nikki going?
Hi, Isabelle. Hi, everybody out there and on the panel. I'm so delighted to see you and to have another evening of conversation and discussions about the topics that passion me the most. I'm not sure that darkness is, but I know that without darkness, we wouldn't really see the light. So I'm excited about deep diving into that. So I'm in France. My name's Nikki Foure, and I'm a healer, a light worker, an ascension teacher, a channeler, and all of the above and none of the above. I'm just a human like all of you, living in this reality and moving away from fear and more into love with practice. So I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful. All right, Kimberly.
Well, hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here once again. My name is Kimberley Leite, and I'm from Sydney, Australia. So I am an ascension teacher. I'm a channel. I'm also a counselor and light language alchemist. So yeah, a lot of my work is actually doing the shadow work. So I channel the ascension teachings and I teach them. So basically what that is teachings of oneness, teachings of law of attraction, and it basically stems from the point that we're all highly enlightened. We have just forgotten. So as we go on this journey of doing our shadow work, our inner work, our soul work, what we are doing, we are peeling back the layers of the onion, so to speak, and as we go into our shadows, we transmute them into love by addressing our limiting beliefs, our rational fears, and perceptions of duality. And as we do that, we remember who we are, which are highly enlightened divine beings. We are unique expressions of source. So yeah, it's fun to be here once again. And thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you, Kimberly. And Roxanne.
Hi, I'm Roxanne Swainhart, and I need to brush my hair. I didn't know it was not this nice, so I'm going to go brush it while everyone else is talking here in a minute. I'm a channel. Most of you know me. Thanks for coming. Let's talk about the darks. Gotta love it. Good.
Thank you, Roxanne. Short and sweet. Daniel.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm currently in Houston, for the time being at least, and eternally integrating. So this is a timely topic to integrate the dark into the light. Yes, we are meant to integrate both to build that coherence within.
Wonderful. And Max.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our roundtable. I'm very happy to be here with everyone all around the world, from United States, Australia, to France, Switzerland, Houston, San Antonio,
Texas is its own
Texas.
country, so you know.
Yes.
Bigger than France.
So, I'm working as a healer channel, wealth, pointing to luck, and bringing out the wealth and the worth in everyone and each one, and myself, because I'm, like everyone, a work in progress.
Thank you so much. And it is curious how we really do experience lack here, right? And it really is tied to a worthiness issue and deserving. So thank you so much for doing that work, Max, because we all need a little boost and a little love and a little light in that area. So thank you. All right, Kimberly, would you mind channeling some light language? Everyone, I think you're familiar with Kimberly's beautiful channeling of light language, taught by Isis, activated within her by Isis. And so Isis is my main guide. And so I love it. Isis works with many of us, but can you channel the light language in setting our intention around this to accept the contrast and darkness within us? Because I know that's very counterintuitive, but if we could see the contrast, I just went to a beautiful meditation with my friend Nikki, and it was a rose meditation. And in that rose meditation, I saw the rose. And if you look at a rose, there is a darkness of the petals blooming, right? There are crevices, and you wouldn't be able to see those beautiful petals if there wasn't the contrast of the color of the darkness, right? And so I wouldn't want to change the rose whatsoever, but I know it's counterintuitive to embrace the contrast within us, right? Because it doesn't seem like we should. So would you mind, Kimberly, setting this intention to help us, all those who are listening, to see the beauty of the rose within us, to see the beauty of the contrast within us?
Wonderful. And if that's okay, oh, he's just left. Max, if I know he's just kind of ducked out. But if he's hearing this, do you want to accompany with me with your crystal bowls, Max?
Oh, he's bringing a rose, I think.
Aww.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and Nikki's showing a rose, but Nikki, you're going to have to talk so they can see it.
Yeah. Max, would you be able to accompany with your crystal bowls today?
Yes.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. It's so beautiful. So so with this light language alchemy meditation, they're healing and ascension source codes. They help to activate dormant DNA. I like to call it meditation on steroids. So it really helps to cut through the ego, because when we go into meditation, a lot of the times our ego comes into play. So what this does, it really helps to go deeper inwards and help to really connect to your source self. So because it is an activated meditation, people might experience it differently. So for some people it can be very relaxing and peaceful. For some people it can be very activating, so you might have lots of energy. It might release some of your inner shadows up to the surface to be transmuted. So everyone has different experiences. And those of you out there who are sensitive to energy, you might actually experience some psychic energy. You might experience, some visions. You might have certain emotions come over you. And that's all part of the process too. So whatever occurs for you, just notice the experience. What I'll do as well, just to save some time, is Isabelle, if you think is best for today, I might cut out the guided section and go straight into the light language. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Kimberly.
That's okay. Just so we have more time with the activation. So yeah, what Isabelle said, just as we get Max gets up with his bowls. So basically, it's about transmuting the darkness. And when we say darkness, what that is our inner shadows. It is aspects of us that we have separated, right? It is our limiting beliefs. It is our rational fears, past trauma. Can be from this life, can be from other lives. But if it's in your reality in this lifetime, it is for you. So understand that no darkness is wrong. It is our inner shadows. It is a polarity system. That's how we expand. That's how source expands, right? So it's all part of the system here. But we don't have to suffer from it. So with this light language alchemy, I'll set the intentions to allow us to better become aware of our inner shadows, to practice loving acceptance with that, and to transmute it, to alchemize it into loving remembrance, into remembrance that we are source, that we are one. All right. So, and I also like to top it off with any other activations that is best for our highest good. And spirit works multidimensionally. So if I set a genuine attention like that, it can be different for everybody out there. Right. So let's do it. Max, are you ready?
Yes.
Drum roll. Wonderful. All right. So everybody out there, I'm just going to ask you now to close your eyes, just to relax. And then what I'll do now, I'll invite Max to start playing his crystal bowls. And then I'm just going to get into a trance state. And I'm actually going to channel the Divine Elohim, which are divine beings very close to source consciousness. So going to do that, and I'll begin in a few moments. Take a deep breath and exhale. As you feel your body becoming lighter and lighter. With each breath, you are becoming more connected to your source essence. And as you slowly start to bring your awareness into the present now, as you open your eyes, you awaken to a new dimensional you, more aligned to your source essence, more aligned to your divine you, the awareness that you are God, source, you are love, and all that is existing is a reflection of love, is a reflection of the expansion game to assist you to remember who you are and all others are in unconditional love. It is with such love that we come through today to allow you to remember the codes, to allow you to remember the oneness of who you are. That is love, that is oneness. Until next time, farewell.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Welcome back, everybody.
Yes. And thank you, Max, for the beautiful bowls.
Yes,
Very
thank you.
nice.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to open up on our discussion around the contrast or the darkness within. And there are some contrasts that we would say are not as hard to accept. So let's say you're impatient, right? And you find yourself being very impatient. One of the easiest ways to accept that you are not patient is to acknowledge you're impatient and just say, yep, I'm very impatient. I want things to be different than they are. And then you can laugh at it or accept it, and it will soften it. And you will notice you're not as impatient once you start to embrace it. So that's a soft one, right? That's not a hard contrast to accept. But then we have some other hard contrasts to accept, the deep ones that we don't want to look at. And some of that is a lot of the soul, a lot that's been coming in my reality is understanding sexual trauma. And sexual trauma is a very hard one because it is really the understanding. The sexual trauma can create a lot of shame, guilt, and blame. And this has been very prevalent in our collective here on Earth. And the control, the fear, the power over someone, the trauma of it can be very intense. But what has been coming to me and understanding is that we were trying to understand the division of the divine feminine and masculine, for we have the divine feminine and masculine within us. And so when we are on the other side as our true form of us, the beings of light that we are, we understand the oneness of the divine feminine and masculine. And so an aspect of the sexual trauma of the wounds that we occur here in this 3D density is for a greater understanding of the division of the divine feminine and masculine and what that represents and what the outcome of that division of the divine feminine and masculine. And so do you see how it can be very, complex, because we go into the shame, blame, and guilt and the victim of this darkness experienced within our soul collective and within us. And so we may not want to examine it or look at it, and we may still want to judge it. Now, this is all personal because you create your own reality, but I would like to bring this concept around this. Because I have been working with many entities, I would say that if it's in your field of energy, because you are a very big field of energy, there is so much more to you than you see. And we are remembering who we truly are. And there are many layers, and it is a game of self-exploration. But I just want to bring in this idea or a possibility. Let's say you came here to explore sexual trauma once again. It is because it's in your field of energy and your inner being chose to play this perspective once again for greater understanding. But you can always change the pattern and choose the frequency of love. So it's not that you always have infinite possibilities, right? There's always infinite possibilities, because that is the design from source, to experience many, many, many things. And it is your judgment around it that is your personal experience and greater understanding. So I'm going to open it up to my friends here and talk about their perspective around the contrast and the darkness. But I wanted you to understand that it really is all for you, and it's really all for your understanding and your experience. And yes, it is hard to see it as for you, and it's hard to see it as loving, but it really is created by you, for you. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that softens it. But let's open it up. So who wants to jump into this kind of interesting subject, I would say?
Am I muted? Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. So as you were talking, Isabelle, and it's actually interesting because I was on another Zoom call earlier today, and the facilitator talked about the 3 archetypes of the villain. Let me see here. Oh gosh. The villain, the martyr, and the victim. Okay. So I'm going to stay with your theme of sexual trauma for a moment. Okay. So these 3 archetypes show up for all of us in some kind of a way. When we are a victim, we feel that those cards were dealt to us. We're the victim. Somebody is the villain. Somebody is victimizing us. And maybe we're the martyr too, because maybe we're enduring this because we maybe have siblings, and maybe whoever's victimizing us, we feel like if we just endure it, then our siblings won't have to endure that, right? So, but we have to understand that we selected those cards, just like you would from a tarot deck. You select the cards when you make your pre-birth intentions, okay? So explore those archetypes, and it's very mucky, it's very ugly in the moment. Our selves as living in 3D reality and duality, we think, why would I choose that? Why would I choose that? But in that, if we can explore that and then transcend it, then we see these archetypes as just facilitators of our reality and our growth. Okay. So that was an interesting tie-in, and I really appreciate that I was on this call earlier, and as you were talking, that I got this download about that. So does anyone else want to hop in?
I just want to add something that I think is next. So when I've been working with the clients, I just want to let you know, when they're under, they communicate with their inner being or their guide. And the client saw herself as a victim here on earth, right, for sexual abuse. But her inner being showed her that she was the perpetrator in another life with that being that victimized her in this life. That man was a little girl that she victimized in another life, right? So I'm using victim and perpetrator, but I really don't mean it. I really mean the experience around that. So there is always, and this has happened to me so many sessions, but like if you see yourself being killed in another life, often you've killed that person. And so there's always an exchange of understanding. And of course, we don't remember all of our lives, right? So we can't see the beauty of it or the greater understanding that there's reasons behind everything. Nothing happens to you by accident, and your inner being can see all the lives you've ever been incarnated and experiences and their potentiality. So there really is a lot more going on. So if you can just go within and say, how is this for me? Why did I experience this? What was those feelings? What did it bring up with me? You'll gain that greater understanding. All right, Nikki.
Okay. Ooh, as soon as you started talking, like my whole body went like numb. It was so heavy for me. And then when Daniel started talking about the villain, the hero, and what's the third one? Rescuer, which is, one of the weeks in our course that we're doing. Yeah, like all these lights came, flashing. So first of all, I want to say something you just said, Isabelle. There are reasons behind everything, for sure, and it's always nice to understand. But if we want to break patterns and transmute all this stuff, we have to go through all the feelings around it. And I think it's really important to acknowledge, the event. And I personally have experienced sexual abuse as a child. So I was a victim. My child did not ask for those experiences. And I do want to say a couple of things. One thing is, yes, there was a reason, because it set me on a very interesting trajectory where I, explored being unlovable in lots of different scenarios. And that birthed a lot of desires for something else. And, in my awakening, I'm finally moving into the fruition of all those desires, and I am beginning to love myself so much more. And if I had not had those experiences that, propelled me to have other experiences and similar experiences, I think the journey would have been a lot less interesting. And as a soul, I think that's a very interesting journey that I chose to go on. And so far, okay. But what I wanted to say about the experiences is that in healing these experiences, it's really important for the person, and I speak for myself, to acknowledge what happened, and not to stay up there in the understanding, but to move down into the body and to, find ways to release all of that blocked energy, trapped energy that is connected to sexual energy, it's connected to self-love and all that other stuff. So it's really important to feel the grief of all of that, because, it wasn't pleasant and it felt wrong. And, it's only recently, I was in a breath workshop 2 weeks ago, and I did some writing around it. And, you know, it's come up again and again in different forms of therapy and stuff. But the writing was, the last limiting belief around it was, I think it shouldn't have happened. And I'm still like, after all this stuff, okay, yeah, I decided I wasn't lovable. Okay, I decided that the world was a dangerous place. You know, I got to these really core limiting beliefs. But the one that I was holding on to that I didn't realize was, it shouldn't have happened. So it did happen. And we don't have to be happy about it, but we can move into acceptance about it. We can process the unresolved feelings around it if they have it, because you know if they're still there, because your relationships, you know, they reflect that unresolved stuff. And then really it's, yeah, so I think it is on a higher vibration, on a soul level. It's an interesting journey. And it's not by coincidence that I started watching, I finished the movie. I was watching a movie on sex trafficking, which was totally triggering for me, you know, because I don't watch the news. And so I don't usually like dip into those kind of things, but they do exist. And so here we are moving into oneness. So how do we practice moving into oneness around issues like this? Yeah, it's really easy to move into oneness when I feel frustrated because there's a lot of traffic. You know, that's no pun intended, but you know, like I feel I can easily move into oneness when I'm in, you know, standing in the grocery store line. Okay, no problem. It's for me. Okay, whatever, you know. But these other things are more of a challenge, and they're on a collective level, and for many of us, I think, on a personal level. So they are opportunities. They didn't happen by chance. Yes, I chose them. But in this experience, as you know, a human on this earth, you know, it's, when I look back on it, the person that I am today is because of those experiences. So, you know, and I really love who I am today. So Nikki wouldn't be Nikki if she didn't have those experiences. Yeah, I'll pass on that. Thank you.
Nikki, thank you so much. This is very heavy. And another common one, because they're with me right now, they want me to bring up abuse of power, a power above someone and power below someone. And that's a very common one, because we have been very, I would say, as a human, we've been mean to each other. We've been very abusive to each other, right? And we've been abused and we've been the abusers, or maybe in this life you've been the abuser only, and well, probably both, but anyways, it doesn't matter. So the abuse of power is another one that I want us to take a look at, because that's another hard one. It's so thick and heavy, right? So does anyone want to jump in around that beautiful subject?
Look, I'll jump in. So abuse of power, something I'm very familiar with, both professionally and personally. As you guys know, I'm a counselor, and I also done postgrad training in relationship therapy and related couples therapy. So basically, for the majority of all my training, it was a very strong focus on domestic violence. So, and I've carried that through with all my work, and the dynamics, of course, with that kind of work. It's not just with domestic violence, it is with all in power balances, right? And so you can use that for everything in our life. Could be not just between relationships, family systems, can be with like work colleagues. You can use this kind of dynamic. So, as you all know, we are going through a collective shift, right? And of course, many of you have heard this before. It's the rise of the divine feminine. So what that is that we are both divine feminine and masculine within. So it's not like, okay, so the male gender just has divine masculine and the women just have the divine feminine. We have a mixture of both, but there has been we would say a bit of an unbalance, let's just say, with the divine masculine, and this big collective consciousness shift that we are going through is basically a balance of that. So because of that, so for instance, the divine masculine is learning to become more softer, to be more intuitive, to lead from the heart center, to be in the heart center. Instead of navigating our reality from the mind, it is bringing it into the heart space. Knowing that true power comes from vulnerability, and this can be very challenging. And with the divine feminine, it's then now finding that strength of power in finding their voice, expressing your truth, because, you know, through many timelines in our human history, the divine feminine has been silenced, right? So we are seeing this a lot happen in our collective. And of course, that gets manifested, of course, in our everyday life experiences. One of those things is control over, not just in like society, certain conditions in our reality. This can be, you know, organizational, like for instance, like religion is one, for instance, throughout different timelines, and it can just be within relationships. So we are now being called to balance that within us, to speak our truth, to express our truth in love. So power over, and this can be very difficult. And I've worked with a lot of people as a counselor, as a channel, as an ascension teacher, with power over. And I've personally experienced this before many years ago, and I probably have told you guys, but I was in a very severe domestic violence relationship many years ago, to a point where I was nearly physically killed. Anyway, so because I went through that journey, I had to go inward. It forced me to go inward, right? Yes, I became completely dissociated, which is like a numbness. But I'm a kind of, on a spiritual level, I can see why I wanted to experience that. And you might go, why would you? And Nikki, thank you so much for sharing your experiences as well, because that can help a lot of our viewers. So thank you for sharing that. So many of us have gone through similar things. So, you know, the light workers out there that's watching this, many of us have gone through similar difficult, what we call as challenging, you know, life experiences, because it has allowed us to really explore our inner shadows, because it gets to a point where we're kind of forced to look at our inner shadows. And as we do our processing work, we're not only processing our own inner shadows, we start to raise the collective consciousness. So basically, if you're experiencing something like this, or you have experienced something like this in your life, know that you're a very highly advanced being. The fact that you chose this for yourself, and you're like, why would I choose something like that? Because you're just so highly advanced, and you are source, right? And you wanted to experience polarity. That's how source expands. We are source energy. So for us to experience polarity, and how us humans experience polarity, is through fear, through different shades of fear, right? And different aspects of love. So it's the contrast, right? It helps us to remember that we're all one. But we don't have to suffer through it. And yes, many of us have suffered through it, but that's also for us. So like, for instance, for my example, you know, by me going through that, I was forced to go inwards. It was that when I searched for answers to really connect with my heart center, to heal myself. And that's where I birthed a desire to help others. That is when I birthed a desire to become a counselor, to help other women, to help other people. And it was in that process of being a professional counselor where I discovered I could channel. So, and then help people on a higher expanded pathways. So, you know, like for me, in my instance, I can see and look back, and I could be so grateful. And then during that situation, and Isabelle talked about past lives, and that is something that actually kept me in that relationship, because I was able to see multiple lives with this person. I was like, I'm supposed to be this person, because I could see I was with them in other lives, and I was meant to be this person, you know, all this kind of stuff, right? But the whole dharmic experience that you were talking about, you know, and even though they might have been with us in other lives, they're part of our soul family. And yes, I know this is hard to say, especially those of you who've gone through a lot of trauma, but those people that create, you know, that perpetrate, they're actually part of your soul family. And you might, and I know this might be difficult to think, because you might think soul families are all very loving and supportive, but sometimes our soul family, they're here to actually help us out of a higher love, to assist us to remember who we are. And sometimes those roles include being the perpetrator. So if you've experienced this, and look, and this is a bit heavy, but like there's many different ways we do our shadow work. So we've talked about like, you know, domestic violence, we've talked about sexual violence, but understand that doing our inner shadow work doesn't have to be also that deep, right? This is just, you know, our perceptions of worthiness. So yes, a lot of people who've gone through deep trauma, that have, you know, limiting beliefs about themselves in relations to worthiness. That's a very common one, right? And they develop insecure attachments, we like to call it, with other people. It creates a trajectory, just what Nikki said. So basically, before we were born, we kind of organized with our soul families. Can you be the perpetrator? Can you be my mother? Can you be my lover? And we create these kind of roles going into physical reality. But if you experience something that's very heavy like this, understand that you have all the tools and technologies, the abilities within you to overcome it, to manage it, right? You've heard of resilience, and it takes work. It's not always easy, right? But if you're here watching this, then you know, you chose to remember more of your power. So as well as that, I just want to take note as well that what Isabelle said earlier about we can have, you know, dharmic patterns in relations to being the persecutor and the victim and so forth. But understand, if you've gone through something, I don't want you to feel like, okay, I must have done something in a previous life to deserve it. Okay, so that's a third dimensional perspective. So it's about knowing that everything that happened to you was for you, but not to be in that position of shame, like, oh, I deserve it because I must have done something in the past life. No one deserves it. That concept of deserving suffering is a concept of a third dimensional reality, duality. But understand here that everything is here for you out of love. And no matter what goes on outside of you in your reality, you'll find that it forces you to go inwards, to love yourself. Because I know it sounds cheesy, but when you love yourself, when you raise your perception of self, when you increase self-worthiness, that is what creates the shift. This is what alchemizes darkness into love, right? This is how you heal. This is how you manifest in your reality and activate more of your divine power within you. So sometimes, I know this is hard, but at times we ask to experience such catalysts so we can go inward, so we can learn to be vulnerable, to surrender to the pain. And yes, we are conditioned to ignore the pain and ignore the suffering, to push it down. But as you guys might know, what's been happening the last couple of years, especially the collective great awakening in terms of consciousness and inform, we are forced, and even if you didn't want to address it, guess what? You probably are addressing it, because now the collective is forced to look at their inner shadows. So you'll find a lot of that stuff we have repressed as a collective, as an individual, is really coming to the surface, right? And I know it's yucky and I know it's difficult, but the best way to release it is to sit with it. But when you can sit with it, you can communicate with it, because guess what? Those aspects of you that are in pain, that are in suffering, that are in darkness, they're just separated aspects of you. They are still aspects of you, and you can unite them into oneness remembrance by accepting them, bringing it into your heart space, feel it in your heart space. And when you can do that and surrender to the emotions, to be vulnerable, you can ask it, what is it showing me? What is it showing me about my belief systems? What are the soul lessons here? How it relates to my soul purpose? Because guess what? Most of the times when we experience very difficult experiences, that relates to our soul purpose here, our unique missions here, just like it did with me. By me now being an Ascension teacher and a counselor, I needed to go through that to shape my trajectory, to spark that pathway to be who I am today. So if you've gone through something difficult, know it's part of your purpose and your journey into discovering that you are divine. So just remember that you are love, and remember, you know, you do not deserve it, no matter what you've done in a past life. So remember that, but it's all part of you to remember who you are. So we'll open it up further, but I like to add just in today's session to maybe go through some techniques to assist us to do that. But yeah, that was all I like to say at this moment. But yes, practice lots of self-love, guys.
I think we should go into techniques, and I would like Roxanne and Max to jump in. But yes, Kimberly, thank you for pointing that out. Just because it's in your field of existence doesn't mean you deserve it. It is for greater understanding of love. And so it's the 3D construct of blame, shame, guilt, pain, and suffering frequency that we can view the experience. That's all I wanted to say. All right, Roxanne or Max?
Let me just jump in. Many things, but I wanted to start with the sexual trauma and abuse of power. I recovered the memory of many lives that I had and that I have during the Roman Empire, and I have this distinct memory of how the Romans used to enslave people, and the enslavement that the Roman did to people was a enslavement that was a total enslavement, meaning that the slaves become real slaves. They loved being slaves. They didn't know anything else, but they were brought into that position. And how they did it used sexuality, so that they became the sexual tool of their masters. And they went there at the extreme, and they didn't have any notion of right, gay, lesbian, straight, or whatever. It was the master controls the slave, and they do whatever they want with the slave, quite everything. Nothing is off limits. And at the same moment, you have the Romans conquering Europe, conquering the known world at the time, and being considered today as the biggest and strongest empire ever known on Earth. So you have that thing, and bringing a lot, obviously, of trauma, sexual trauma, and abuse of power. That is one thing, but I will not go into any judgment. Why? Because there is no judgment to be having there. And I wanted to go to another thing. As a child, I've been abused by practically everyone, starting from my mother. And I love how, Kimberly, you put mother just after perpetrator. I love that. By my mother, my father, my stepmother, and my sister too. And that created for me a lot of trauma, obviously, as everyone that will go through abuse. And the only thing they didn't do is sexual abuse. That's the only thing that they didn't use. But that's, for me now, it's not the point anymore. Why? Because I needed several years to go through that, but I have now realized how all of that is irrelevant anymore. Because the abuse, yes, it existed, it was done, obviously, but that was another me, another version of me. But also because I've grown into the understanding that all of that is, first of all, in my memory, but also real. And also, these beings that have done whatever they have done, I have memories of moments where my mother was abusive, but then when she was talking about it, she had a perspective that was completely different from mine. And I didn't realize it at the time, but now looking back, I have there are moments where she's just saying things that for me are just incoherent. Didn't happen that way, but she says it happened this way, and it's absolutely confusing. But in that relationship now, seeing it, that I realized that what she was saying was not out of craziness or just being a bitch. She was saying because that was her perspective. She didn't realize what she was doing, and she had moments where she was saying, oh, I raised my children very well, there is nothing wrong there, I didn't do anything wrong, and never understanding other perspectives. But that's her perspective. That's what she was seeing. That's how she was living it. And even though for me it was really very difficult to understand and admit, but at some point you come to the realization, yeah, right, okay, that was her perspective. And even though it's not mine, and I don't give a fuck about her perspective because it's not mine, so I don't have to waste my time into that. My experience is one and not hers. However, I have now to take that under consideration and move a step forward from what the experience of being a victim or being whatever, and letting go of that and say, I had an experience with my parents. Now that's over. And I broke that to the point of saying, now I see that those beings have taken over a position of perpetrator from my perspective, and that was, let's say, we played it, right? I played the victim, they played the perpetrators, and if you had to talk with my stepmother, she will say that I am the perpetrator in her perspective because she's not satisfied with the outcome of things. But right, that's how things are. And by taking that point of view, I'm able now to have a unconditional love for these beings, even though for the humans, I absolutely have no esteem or I have no consideration because I know them. So I know the humans, so I don't have really but moving forward for that, I have a love for the beings, for them, because it takes courage, let's say, to take that position of the bad guy in the story. And but now we have also to bring that a step forward and recognizing that in their perspective, in the perspective of others, we may be the bad guys. And we have absolutely no idea of that because it's not our perspective. So in our perspective, we are not bad. But it's I was playing with people like I was communicating with people like Jane Austen and other authors where they wrote books, and in the books you have the perspective of the main character, obviously, and all the book is built on that perspective. But then I was going there and say, well, let's take the perspective of other characters. And then you realize the story of the book changes completely. It's absolutely not the same story. It's a story completely different, and where the main character of the main book may even disappear in the whole thing. If you take, let's say, the perspective of Lord Voldemort, Harry Potter doesn't exist in the story. It's even not there. Because who cares, right? It's his perspective, so he's building his own reality, and I like now to play with this, right? What is good, what is bad? Because if you turn the table, you realize that there is something behind that may, right, change completely the way you tell the story.
I love how you brought Voldemort. You're right. If So I don't know, but let's assume a lot of people know the Harry Potter story, just for a brief moment. Voldemort, you're absolutely right, would not have Harry Potter. He would have Harry Potter maybe when he was trying to kill Harry Potter's parents, and then maybe have the shock that the baby didn't die, and then Harry Potter would be out, right? So that's really good to kind of see that it is everyone's perspective and their viewpoint. And can you be honest with yourself, knowing that you did play the villain, right? Can you? I don't know. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But if you went into intense fear, I would say you're probably not very loving, right? Because you're projecting your own shadow and anger on someone else. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the roles and judgments. And we're going to go into techniques to heal it. But it's to open up your mind, open up your perspective of your emotions being expressed through you and how they can be perceived. That's all I want to play in the Scooby-Doo game detective that I'm in. Okay, Roxanne.
Hi, you all can hear me? Good? Cool. Let's approach something here a little bit different. Difference of opinion, of course, because everyone's a singular universe, right? So let's look at something that was given to me as a status from Osifius years ago, that love is not an emotion. Love itself is a state of being. Love in and of itself is unconditional. So the conditions that the human experience that we assign to reason is the human experience. That's what it is. It's not outside the human experience. If you say it's outside the human experience, then that's your human experience. Doesn't go any farther than that, because that's the only thing we know. If we're a fractal, and you guys are all thinking the same thing I am, we're playing a game of separation. This is the story that's been told to us. We got the story from other people through the human experience. And within that experience comes a resonation, and that resonation speaks the truth beyond justification, beyond reason, beyond causality, beyond purpose, beyond pre-birth ideas, beyond soul, beyond learning lessons. All that stuff is the reasons and the translations and the divine definition of the experience itself, which is the human experience. So let's look at a different point of view. Let's be the creator for a moment that doesn't have conditions, that would never bound itself to an idea of victim nor an assailant, because it doesn't know perspectives of defined objectivity, because it is only its universe experiencing itself, and everyone's universe has one thing in common. I'll tell you what it is. No one's in charge. Put someone in charge, that's your experience. Put someone higher than you, that's your experience. Who's telling you no? No one can. No one has ever been able to tell you your truth. Can't. Separation speaks the truth for everyone coveting their belief systems. My mom was born in Greece in 1939. She ate dirt. Her dad were killed by the Nazis. Her mom was stoned out of town for being a whore, right? For that after death premarital or marital thing. Big sinner, stoned out of town. She grew up that way, and here she is traveling, and I grew to hate them both because I had a different opinion inside, but I didn't know my worth. I didn't know myself. And that in and of itself is not causality. It's not blame, but I experienced hate for them. I blame them. I experienced victim. I myself, you guys know this if you ever watch my channel, I was raped when I was 13. You want to know something? Yippee fucking skippy. Because if I attach to emotion to it, then I can have an identity, and that identity will give me a value of the human experience. But if I look at it as an unconditional reality and see that my mom and dad are in their own world having an unconditional reality, but since I'm separating, I'm assigning things to causality and reasons, and then I'm working within that field to solve it, to finish it, or to explain it, or to justify it, or to bring it and own it, and do all these things, which is fucking what? My human experience. My perspective is we're not lost gods. We're not less gods. We're not learning a fucking lesson. We don't need any of this stuff to be. What we're doing is creating an experience, a human experience, because we're already creators. No one took our stripes. We didn't get demoted from God, did we? When one is all and all is one, I'm not going to assign myself to an outside source because I'm the same dude everyone else is, and I'm a creator. I'm the one God and all the gods that there are, and all of you are the same freaking dude, dudette, whatever you want to assign it to, it doesn't fucking matter. From your singular point of view, that's your universe, that's your uniqueness, and we're in this world diving and exploring. To what end? None. No outcome. Constant now. We assign it to pre, to post, to past lives, to future lives. It's all now. And it's all transfiguration. And it's all movement. And the experience of separation gives us the validity of polarity that we covet as this wonderful identity. And I got to suffer. I got to scream, and I got to be angry, and I got to fear. So much fear. But I didn't get to as a reason or a lesson. I got to because I'm a fucking badass. I'm a goddamn creator on a planet of separation with other fucking badasses, figuring out a game only using our memory, our fucking memory, to validate the experience through causality. And then the awakener comes on board and says, hey, yo, get out of your fucking memory. Let's go ahead and look at what's going on with the now. How do you feel? What's going on in your now that tells you the story of the current self and transfiguration? Memory then becomes an ally and not an identity. It doesn't fortify a possible future because the future doesn't matter. I was thinking about what Nikki said. If Nikki didn't have that experience, she would have a less experience. Nikki doesn't know. If I didn't get raped, am I this person? If I had a singing voice, am I this person? I don't know what I'm at, and I don't care. Because I'm not going to miss something that's not here and now. Because the here and now is the gestalt of me. The presence of my own awareness as a creator that has no apologies and no reasonality, and doesn't beckon for the liking of external validation at any given point because it knows itself is worthy. Now that's the journey though, isn't it? Those are the tools that I discovered and learned from my crew. My crew was a reality that I attracted, and I assigned to Mosifius and Sylvester, the Parisians and the Hathors, the fairies and the kibbles and bits along the way, so I can experience a world until I start enlightening my eyes and saying, wait a minute. These are chosen realities of relationship. And those relationships speak of vibrational truth. And what that truth is becomes my transfiguration. What if that truth that gives me such comfort and security of identity? Oh God, it's like a fucking Saturday night hooker. She's so beautiful and so sweet, and you got the money for her, and you want to get back into bed and feel good about yourself with that idea, imagination, that tells you if you validate this belief system, this structure, this self, this identity, it's going to give you what you're looking for. That's why we're all chasing our tails for happiness when happiness doesn't lie in destination. Happiness is an awareness of relationship to yourself. So you look at that belief system that gives you identity, that gives you purpose and meaning, gives you reasons. I'm wondering if there's a way to relate to reality beyond that. And I'm here to tell you, yeah. So what am I to you right now? I'm just a fucking light. I don't matter. Because I can't be extinguished and I can't be gestalted or revered unless you put me there. See, that's where it is. Wherever you ship becomes your world. So each one of you are experiencing the human experience. And how we explore that human experience doesn't have the leading outcome of grandeur. Because being unconditional doesn't have an emotion that would give a limitation of positivity. Humans give ourselves limitations of positivity. And we all have our own bottom suffering. Because we are all unique in our transfiguration, in our assigning of those identities. Did it hurt? Yes. Did I get to experience hurt? Yes. Am I afraid? Yes. Am I worried? Absolutely. Do I know what's coming next? Not a fucking chance. But that doesn't keep me from being. That doesn't keep me from my awareness and my existence every here and now, transfiguring myself. Nothing has ever stopped me from experiencing. And when I start seeing that, and I start seeing I don't need to be so hell-bent on figuring the journey and start experiencing. So we can transfigure now into tools. My biggest tool was surrender and brutal honesty. My biggest tool is expression of that honesty. When I'm angry, I'm angry. You can ask Lucia, one of my students and friend I talk to every day. I fucking yell at her for her fucking shit. If I don't yell, I'm not myself. But I'm wondering if yelling is actually a subjective reality of truth, or is the person that says I'm yelling objectifying me? And I didn't give a fuck anymore. And that's when I found a relationship of self. See, if we're unconditional, no one's in charge, how are we supposed to act? We're not, because there's no standards and there's no one in charge. The acting is already your choice in the now of yourself knowing yourself. So how everyone is objectified from each singularity is the internal universe experiencing that. So when you start to see your behavioral aspects of transfiguring those belief systems that you recognize, like my fucking anger, because my abuse, my sexual abuse, being that person was an actual fucking crybaby. But then I realized the crybaby was an experience. It wasn't less, it wasn't more. It was a fucking steak dinner. It was a Starbucks flat white. It was a romp in the lilies. Everything is experiential, and if I assign it to something, then I become the value of that through my emotion. If I transfigure the emotion, then it becomes motion. And that motion I can never describe to you because it's only discoverable by a singularity, because it's that intimate, because you cannot share it. Because we never share our universes, because we're only one. One is already here. The division within the one, ourselves, is the journey. So when I saw my hate and my hope and my fear and my abundance and my lack, what got me home? What brought me to this isness? That I don't have value. I know that, but I have no value. I cannot react. I am the truth of myself. To those human constructs that I covered as identity during a lifetime of my mastery was brutal honesty. I mean, so fucking brutal. I had to sit with my guilt and my shame. And when I found him stirring in my body, I didn't do anything. I didn't fucking cleanse. I didn't fucking do anything. I didn't call a friend. I didn't take any goddamn drugs. I didn't do shit but stand in my own isness. I owned my attractive reality because I am. And then I realized it's not self-defeating. It's self-discovery. To stand there in the isness of the wake of your own love that is unconditional. And me so desperately wanting to assign it to something. But I held to the discipleship of awareness, the awareness of my own worthiness, that I am not a lesser God, and I shall not be bound by the memories of my covets from those that are birthed in my journey. I am, and I'm enough. So then that honesty and that brutality and that absolute allowance of fear to sing through my vibrational isness brought me to an awareness of worth that is unmeasured, unjustified, undescribable, never defended, of worth. And my reality is magnificent, and it looks nothing like my projected reality, because my projected reality lies in my memory, and my memory is a coveting belief systems of a human. The relationship for human is changing for me. I will be the incarnation, but I will not be the relationship to the identity. I would manage to say, as an idea for my own journey, that the Arcturians don't live in the idea of their Arcturian world manifesting a a point of view of judgment upon themselves. So therefore, the Arcturian knows their creator, but they don't beg the creator. They don't value the creator because they know they are the creator, and they are simply an incarnation having an Arcturian experience. And that experience is only the moment of transfiguration. But the mastery in that moment is to see this. That's my human interpretation. That's my human experience. So I'm going to make the human mine because I own it, because I am. So the darkness that lies within is love. It's a state of being. Oh, you can have a relationship and you can put it anywhere how you want to, because you are your own universe. You are your own master. You are your own creator. You relate, you create. Darkness for me is no different than light, because light and dark in and of itself are an idea, an experience. I lie in unconditional, and I express myself with my ideas of my current evolution. And that evolution is unknown to me and undiscovered. But I discover the unknowable as I journey in the now. So be that master to yourself. Embrace the dark. It's not a bad thing. I will feel shame. I will feel guilt. I will harbor anger and I will assign it. I will be hate and I will be separation. I will kill my brethren and I will revere the ones on my side because I am divided. And that is my mastery, and I'm allowed to have that. Do whatever the fuck you want, because you're never going to get judged, because no one gives a shit about you, because you are only creator. No one can care about me. They only care about their reaction in their own universe. They only assign care to an emotion that is targeted as an identity, which is the experience of humanity. The God, the grace that we've given ourselves, this fucking game. Absolutely epic. So journey well, masters. Go fuck it up to find that kingdom and then own it. I'm good.
I'd like to jump in. Well, go ahead, Isabelle.
No. I just wanted to thank Roxanne for that. There was a chock full of information there, and we'll break it down. All right, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, so going into tools. So this year plus of this shift in humanity, that the pandemic. So we have channelers calling that the global reset. We have a channeler on this panel who refers to it as the purge. My guides call it the integration, okay? Integration is a tool. So let's go back to the archetypes, the divine masculine, for example. Within that archetype, there is a sub-archetype that is the wounded warrior. That is the man that cannot deal with the pain and the trauma, that is out there to bulldoze everybody down, carries a club, spear, knife, gun, whatever, okay, right? So that individual is shunned, okay? Well, in an integrative state, can we welcome that person who is just perpetually pissed off and ready to get into a fist fight and right? Can we do what like Roxanne says, give them a coconut smile? Can we start there? And it's the name of a Smashing Pumpkin song, disarm them with a smile, right? And so that is starting to integrate. And also, I mean, we were talking about Harry Potter earlier. Well, I loved as a kid the Dark Crystal. So when the shard of that crystal is reintegrated and that crystal is whole, guess what? The good guys and the bad guys all come together as one light being. And it's actually, I mean, that obviously was very channeled. It's a being of light, okay? So when we talk about beings of light, we cannot discount the dark. The dark is part of the light. It shall always be. When we look out there to the universe, guess what? The observable part of the universe is less than 25%. There's a lot of dark matter out there, okay? So with the structure of the universe is mostly dark matter, which I would interpret as the unknown. Are we going to shut out the unknown? No, we want to explore that. So again, it's about integrating. And we talk about shadow work all the time, but can we leave room in there for integration? I'm not doing shadow work to get rid of the bullshit and just bury it, because that bullshit is going to fertilize the soil, and I'm going to see that coming up. It's going to show up in my reality so many damn times, and I'm going to be so damn sick of it, but it's always going to be there. So integrate. You can't push it down. It's like trying to push down a flotation device. It's going to keep popping back up. Okay, no worries. But yeah, I just really, as Roxanne was talking, it really got me to thinking about the integration and not discounting the dark parts. Part of doing the soul work is your parts work, okay? And really accepting the dark parts of us as that information center, part of the information center for our beingness. And not just saying, oh, love and light, I'm ascending. So I just wanted to share this, just that tidbit there.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I
Can I
appreciate it.
pop
Go
in?
ahead, Nikki.
I wanted to thank Daniel for talking about integration, because that is what shadow work is. It's not about getting rid of it. It's about integrating it into our whole self so that we move into oneness and we aren't separated, pushing down the parts of us that we judge or see as less than. And I also wanted to say something. You mentioned the unknown, or somebody mentioned the unknown, and I heard a quote the other day, so it's not mine, but the unknown holds infinite possibility. So I really loved that. And then in terms of tools, I love brutal honesty. Thank you, Roxanne. Because it's, you know, it's sort of like brutal honesty is actually, it's first and foremost begins with yourself, right? So if you're no longer the victim, you're taking responsibility as a master creator, then you really do have to, if you look at your reality and you find something that is not to your liking, it's your responsibility to get really honest and figure out why, do a little digging. So just food for thought there. Thank you.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about was the stories. A lot of times, embracing in the dark, this could be a process for all of us, but Roxanne certainly mentioned it. I think all of you guys mentioned it in one way or another, but we tell ourselves a story. We tell ourselves a story of the memory of the experience that creates a belief within us so strong that we may not even be aware of it playing in the background. And so the story of the experience, because you might be telling yourself a story around it. And what is that story? And believe it or not, that story is not concrete. It does not have to be the story that you told yourself over and over and over again, that it is your truth. It's not, because that story is energy, and energy transforms and changes. That is the design of the system. And so if you can think of your story as an energy or a frequency or a color, that may help you soften believing that story to be so true of your judgment about yourself and why the way you are in your experience. So if you can kind of soften it to kind of allow yourself some wiggle room around the story and be able to be brutally open with yourself and not attach yourself to the story of your experience, that will allow you room to move that energy, right? So when I do my shadow work, me personally as Isabelle Zimmerman, I don't know if you guys have picked this up, but I like to think of myself as a detective in a Scooby-Doo game. That's just my creation that I like because it makes me laugh and it's fun. And sometimes it can be really scary and I can eat some really good food too. So I play myself in a Scooby-Doo game. And so I try to be a detective. And even though I'm really scared, looking into that story or looking into that experience, and I do see aspects of myself as little Isabelle, as my inner child, and my ego. I actually created an identity for my ego so I could relate to an aspect within myself. And my ego's name is Chris, by the way. You guys all want to know. So I speak to the different aspects of myself so I can relate, so I'm not as scared, so I can feel it and go deep into that emotion and deep into that experience so I can have a greater understanding. And I'm not saying it's easy all the time, but I would say it's pretty cool. It's really cool because you do release it, you do transform it, you do move the energy within you. And I don't know, you just got to try it. I hope you're all trying it. Give it a whirl. Doing the shadow work and embracing your contrast and your story. Does anyone else want to jump in?
I'll jump in. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yes, communication with our shadow selves. That's, you know, that's a very powerful way to communicate with yourself, to find out what exactly you're doing. Like, what are you not loving? What is your perception of self? And but for you to do that is to sit with that emotion. And many of you are probably familiar with ascension symptoms and familiar with the purge. So a purging is basically what's happening is all our like limiting beliefs, our limiting stories, our perceptions of duality, our trauma, our rational fears, anything that's not aligned to unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, coming up to the surface for us to address it. So whether you are consciously processing it or not, it's going to come up for you if it hasn't already come up for you. So yeah, you're going to feel a bit yucky, but if you can sit with that and just surrender to it. And we've been so conditioned to be vulnerable, to not be vulnerable to our emotions, right? To be like, just think, like what Daniel said, you know, just love and light and, you know, and just to think happy thoughts, but it's not about that. For you to really, to step into your true potentiality, your true divine power, is to use the technology of emotions, because we create our reality through emotions. We create universes through emotions. And what comes before emotions? Thoughts, right? And I know you mentioned the color, Isabelle. So think of us as if we're aligned to a perception of fear, like a victim mentality, like people are controlling us or people are victimizing us. You can think of our reality then becomes us vibrating in a color, like let's just attribute it to brown. Let's just say that. So then we're vibrating in a dimension of brown, which means everyone in that bubble, in that dimension, all our people in the roles, like our perpetrators and those around us are now shaded with this brown color, right? Because they're honoring this role, they're honoring this game of brown color, which is, you know, the victimization. So once it's all vibration, right? And we're multidimensional beings. So we're here and then we're existing everywhere at once. So then if you can raise your perception, and as a technique to basically, first you got to feel it, but then once, because when you can feel it, you let go of the resistance to going there, to communicating with it. And then when you can heighten your perception, it's really about changing your relationship to the fear. So you're like, okay, I'm feeling crap, I'm feeling fear. That's okay, you know, because just think of it as a master teacher out of love, not because we deserve something, not because, you know, something against us. It's actually for us because we're highly advanced. It's like we are playing this master game with ourselves as God creators. So, you know, once you can raise your perception, even if you don't know the irrational fear there or the trauma that relates to, if you can just see it as like in relations to another person. Okay, if something's happening and you're triggered by fear in relations to another, I know it might be hard, but you can do this in the moment with time. You can journal around it as well and just try to raise your perception that this person is you, because in higher truth, we are all one and everyone's just playing a role for us. So if you can go, okay, this person seems to be like putting fear on me. It's not that other person. That person It's just mirroring a belief we have about ourselves, a story we have about ourselves and about our world. So it's not like you've done anything wrong, because we can't do anything wrong, right? Because we are God creators, and the perception of wrong or right is a perception of duality. However, you can say, okay, this person is triggering, is a mirror to me, right? We're mirrors to each other. If you have a negative emotion, they are a mirror to a belief you have about yourself that's limiting, or irrational fear. And, you know, these limiting beliefs could have been formed from your childhood, if you've gone through trauma, could be your upbringing, and you know, or events along the way. So basically, once you can do that, you already release the resistance, and you can see that person is a master teacher. And just by you doing that, you will find you release the resistance, and then the dimension you reside in changes color, let's just say. So then the perpetrator, so to speak, and everyone starts to then vibrate in this new color. What that means is, that means you manifest new conditions. So you can do this in the moment, and I've practiced it, and it is possible that when you're experiencing a lot of fear, when it feels like there's a lot of fear on you from another person, if you can raise your perception and go, it's okay. What is this showing me about my belief systems? You can process it in the moment. It takes practice, doesn't happen overnight, but you can be the observer, kind of step back and go, isn't this interesting? I'm feeling fear. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, this person seems to be in a lot of fear. Oh, that's interesting. And I'm feeling this emotion, obviously reflecting a belief I have about myself or about others. Am I judging myself or someone else is wrong? Is it look into the belief systems there, and then you'll find if you can elevate your perception in that moment, the situation will change on its own, because everything in our reality is reflective of our vibration. And yes, our vibration can be what we call soul contracts. So for instance, if you wanted to explore some sort of dynamic, yes, that comes into our vibration too. So our thoughts, our perspectives mirrors our emotional state, and our emotional state creates the dimensional experience. So it's really about letting go of the resistance in the moment. You can do it in the moment. You can do it outside of the moment. Process it, journal about it. You can journal to process it, the integration, so what others have said here. But ask yourself, how is it for me? You know, really, really go in there. Don't just journal and be like, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me, right? Go, okay, this occurred. Note your experience. Be the observer, you know, and go, okay, how is this for me? What is this showing me about my belief system? What is it showing me about how I view others, how I view reality, how I view conditions? Am I seeing this person as separate to me? It really, really process it. And you can also go, how this relates to my purpose, because guess what? All this, what we call as, you know, negative experiences or trauma usually always relates to our unique mission here. Because of course, our general purpose is to experience, is to be what Roxanne said, to be a God creator, to experience life, because that's how Source expands itself, by experiencing reality through different perspectives and duality and polarity. So, you know, it's about that experience as well. So just process it, and you'll find it relates to specific missions. So as you get more used to the shadow work going inwards, you'll find, I mean, you've all heard of the silver lining, but really it creates, if you've done the work, it then usually helps then activate a kind of a feeling of a purpose, right? A calling, so to speak. Like for me, for a lot of other people have gone through something, it kind of does birth a feeling like, okay, now I've empowered myself through my own healing. Now I want to empower others. So it's a common, you know, it can be a common pathway for people to go out there, we call as light workers, to empower others. So understand that everything you've been through is for you. So it's really about bringing it inwards, knowing that that other person is just a mirror to you, that there's no people out to cause you harm. There's no, you know, people in society that wants to control us, right? It's everyone's just playing a role, and we have individual soul contracts, so we call it individuality, and then collective soul contracts. So people are just playing roles for us, and they are here out of a higher love. It's like our higher selves and their higher selves are playing this game. We've just forgotten the game, basically. So just process it, on also focus on your heart, bring it into your heart space. We've been, I guess, again, conditioned to not be vulnerable, to block the heart, to put the walls around the heart and just try to analyze it. No, bring it. You have to feel the emotion for you to transmute it, because that releases the resistance, and sit with it. I do this when I'm getting negative emotion. Sit with it and ask yourself, okay, I'm feeling crap. If you need to cry, if you need to scream, do it. Get it out of your system, release it. Stop holding on to that resistance. Then ask it, okay, I am divine. You can communicate to that dimension, because that the you that's feeling fear or sadness or whatever it is, that is dimension of you. You can communicate to that dimension. And when you build that relationship, that's when you can transmute it into oneness, into love, into unconditional love, right? Which is unconditional acceptance. So you can do that, but you can only do that if you release resistance to it. So feel the emotion and ask, what are you trying to show me about myself? What are you trying to show me about my path? What am I not loving? What is my perception of self-worth here? Is it highlighting a perception that I don't think I'm worthy enough, that I'm not powerful enough? What is it? So you can communicate with that dimensional self, right? So understand that everything in our reality are messengers, are teachers for us, but as aspects of us, because we are one. So once you start to the power over dynamic, once you can see that that other person is just you, it's just another frequency of you playing a role, then you can let go of the resistance to that whole victim mentality paradigm. And I know it's common, and we're human, yes, much more than human, but we want to experience this polarity, but you don't have to suffer through it, right? But if you want to release through suffering, you do need to address it. But again, look, some things are can be very difficult. So yes, don't feel like if you need assistance, like, you know, you can seek out professional help to assist you, to really go there if you do need it. Just to be that guide and facilitator while you go there, just, you know, so we can hold your hand. So there's that option too, if you're finding that it's a bit too challenging on your own to deal with the shadows, but you can start right there. And of course, meditating, that's the number one thing, to go there, sit with it, meditate, but focus on your heart center, like we did with the meditation. Because once you focus on your heart center, practice meditation, and you can physically hold your heart, you can imagine your heart opening as a portal, you'll find that you're never alone, and you'll discover your own power, and that helps you to remember who you are at the core, right? And it's here where you can open up the channel to your guides, like the angels or the beings of the light. You know, everyone is here for you, because guess what? They are us. They are within us. They're not outside of us. Everyone's just honoring the role here that we chose to play. So honor your reality. Your reality is perfect, and everything that you've experienced is supposed to happen the way it's supposed to allow you to experience, right? So really is about practicing self-love, self-worth. Yes, I know we kind of bang on about it a lot, and it can sound cheesy, just go, oh, self-love, self-worth, but really it's because when you can do that within yourself, you can then use that on others. If you can love yourself and see yourself as worthy, you can look at what we call as perpetrators and go, I love this person. Maybe you might not be able to love them in the moment straight away. You can go, I accept this person, and because they're showing me an aspect of me that I'm not loving, and then you can then be grateful for this person. So it gets easier to do that with other people when you can do it for yourself. So yeah, it's just about letting go of the resistance, connecting with your heart space, and processing it, because it's all for you out of a higher love.
Thank you, Kimberly. I think that was a lot of wonderful tips and tricks there for everyone to use. And we would like to open it up to the audience if they have any questions. They can ask any questions around this or any clarification if they wish.
Let me go with one thing. It's not, no one asked this, but let me put this as a question. Let's say you're talking of victims and perpetrators in a way you seem to condemn, to let the perpetrator get away with it and put the guilt upon the victim. Any comment?
Can you say that again, Max, that last part? So you said condoning the perpetrator?
Condoning the perpetrator and their acts, and putting the guilt upon the victim.
Okay, can I say something? Okay,
Yeah.
that's a great question. Is that your question, Max?
I
Okay.
invented it. Yeah, it's true.
Okay, first of all, I don't think anybody here has put guilt on the victim. And I know probably all of us have had the experience of victim, and we go dip in there from time to time. So, and I think that it was actually Kimberly who said, no one's saying you deserved what you experienced just because in a past life you were the perpetrator. So now it's your turn to be the victim. So that, if anybody understood that, that definitely isn't what we're saying. And condoning the perpetrator. No, I wouldn't say that we're condoning the perpetrator, but we're accepting that this is part of the dynamic, this triangle, these three roles, right? That we tend to be in, where somebody's, you know, and even in like my family system, you know, sometimes I'm the hero, sometimes my husband is the hero, sometimes my son is, and then I'm the victim. I mean, we're always alternating, and it's very fascinating to watch yourself and the different triangles you see in your experience and how you move into different ones. And then sometimes we like to settle in just one of them, and we really master that one, or really uncomfortable in some other ones. And when we can move into a higher perspective and we can look down, knowing that we don't have to have labels or conditions or objectives and all those things that Roxanne was talking about, we understand from a higher perspective that this is just the human experience. So basically, we're not saying that it's right or wrong, because this is the 3D definition in duality, but rather this is the human experience. And you know, on some level, we've all, you know, I know I've been the perpetrator in certain situations. It might not have been sexual, but in certain situations, I was so hell-bent on being right that I was, you know, being mean to somebody else. But I kind of want to bounce off a couple of things that Kimberly said. So thank you, Kimberly, so much for beautifully describing the processing of limiting beliefs. That was beautiful. If you guys are going to have to go and listen to it and take notes, because I love it being on this panel, because I'm with people who are actually, you know, here we are on the leading edge doing this work. And I wanted to say something about these emotions. So, you know, Kimberly said, and I think you've said it before, I love it, change your relationship to fear. So I want to talk about emotions, because when I've been on this spiritual journey a long time, like most of you, and it was pretty surprising to me when I realized I still had ideas about my emotions being wrong. They'd been lingering way too long. That story was still there. What was all this sadness about? It's like I had ideas that once I did all this work, this deep diving and shadow work, and you know, practicing the teachings and the awakening and all that, that I was going to have some definitive objective in the future that was going to be way better than my now. And so, no, you know, so one thing I want to say is emotions. They're all, yeah, it's kind of like what people have been saying about the light and the dark. It's the same, really. The emotions are all the same, but we actually give a lot of credit for some emotions. Some emotions are like wonderful, like joy, you know, skipping, happy, all that stuff gets lots of thumbs up, right? 5 stars. How about depressed, sad, angry? Not even 1 star sometimes, you know, especially for women, you know. So that I want to talk about my relationship to my emotions, because I had them all in categories. They were good, not so good, really bad, and you know, oh, you're here again, unwanted visitor. You know, I think Rumi has a saying about emotions, like they are just visitors. And so if you could look at them as house guests, and they're only going to be there a while, maybe you could like allow them to be there and bring them a cup of tea. It's like this thing about communicating with your emotions. It's about allowing them to be there. It's about withdrawing the judgment of the time they decide the frequency they come, the length of time they stay. It's like, could you be like the wonderful hostess and allow your emotions to just be there? And you know, that takes time. Kimberly said something like, eventually you get to a place where you may not love the perpetrator, but you accept. And I can say that that's certainly true, that through time and through the work, no, I don't love those people, but I accept them and I accept their experience, and I also reap the fruit of that that reality, that experience that I had with them. And then Kimberly mentioned observer, and that really is the beauty, because for a long time my emotions drove me. So like as soon as I felt sad, I had to go fix it because it was uncomfortable. If I was like happy, I wanted it to last and I wanted to keep it, and I was afraid I was going to lose it. So it's sort of like when you can feel the joy, and you can go into the depths of joy, and you can also feel the pain and the sorrow, and allow it to be there and let it move through you without resistance. So the first step, I guess, is really becoming aware that you're resisting an emotion, and you're resisting something that you're experiencing, and so it stays way longer and it's exhausting. And so when you practice accepting what is, how you're feeling, your stories even, that's when you get the grace of moving more into the observer state. And that is really cool, because then when things pop up, so triggers, and then it's like, oh right, okay, they're an asshole. No, they're not an asshole. I'm being triggered, and this is my story. Oh, okay, I remember that. Oh yeah. And I think I had like a trigger a few days ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, it like lasted 5 minutes instead of 24 hours or 24 days or 24 months, So the beauty of doing this work is that you really experience a new level of freedom. We always talk about happiness and joy and all that kind of stuff, but really we just want to be free. We want to be free to be who we are. And that freedom lies in self-love, absolutely. But this whole process, the one that Kimberly so deliciously went through, is really the nugget, that you work, you do the work, and then you move into these places where you feel freer, you feel more joy in the now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Max, is there any questions? I don't see any, right?
No, there aren't any.
Okay. So
And
I think
before we go, hey,
Go
let me tell
ahead.
you another tool. You said it. You guys carry the story. Abraham had said, if you buy into the story of generational diseases, heart disease, cancer, you're carrying the unwanted story. There's no causality. There's no victimization. There's a created reality through your perception of truth, and that's how you experience life. Only one that's carrying the story is you. If the story is a valuable of identity, like Nikki was saying, I was angry, I'm mad, I'm an assailant, I'm angry. That's the value of your experience. That's a truth about you. If you birth an observer about that and start to take a position of divinity, and you allow yourself to recognize that belief system, the story you're telling you, if you don't choose it, you sit with it, then the story has to change because you're choosing a different relationship with that conditioning. You never change the conditions. That's asinine. That's what humans keep doing, trying to change a condition through, you have to believe and respect and do all these things for me. Change your relationship with the conditioning within your kingdom, and the kingdom changes. So you're the one carrying the story. Change the story. Go ahead.
So thank you, Roxanne, because I just want to show a simple one. So a simple one is I'm being attacked. So let's just change that story to I'm attracting, right? So that gives you the power, because now you are the creator, because you're saying I'm attracting instead of I'm being attacked, right? It changes it. So I'm not saying that it's easy, but there are a multi-pronged approach. There are many steps. There are many ways. Kimberly, Nikki, Roxanne, Daniel, Max, we all share different ways of seeing the darkness and the contrast, because it really is a love frequency. And if you can just open your mind to the beauty of it and accept it like a rose, it softens it. And that's all we're really trying to do to assist, is really help you see how beautiful you truly are, no matter what story you're telling yourself, no matter where you are in your journey, no matter where you are in your understanding. You are a magnificent being of light and love. So that's it. And who is hosting next 2 Sundays, every other week? Who's hosting next?
Should be Max, right? Unless Daniel or Nikki want to, but I don't think you guys do. Yeah, I think it's you, Max, right?
Yeah.
All right. So Max will be hosting.
Yeah,
So
and I have already the theme, the topic.
Yeah.
Which is continuation of tonight. Hero villain inversing perspective.
Wait, Max, say it. What? Yeah, say it again.
Hero villain inversing perspective.
Perfect.
I love it. I love it. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Can I just jump in, because Spirit's really getting on me to mention something, sorry, as I do. Just in relations to what Max said about condoning this kind of thing. So that's just quickly before we go, that's what's happening with the rise of the divine feminine. So basically we you know, for many timelines, we did accept it. We accepted this kind of power over. So when it happens in your reality, everything that we said today about acceptance, but it's not about condoning it. And in fact, if you can get to a point of acceptance, you'll feel inspired to actually say something. So this is about stepping into our power, not just doing all the shadow work and then processing, but you'll get to a point where you might be required to say something, to take action. So, and sometimes we can be confused and be like, okay, so if I say something like this is something I do not prefer, if I take action in something, maybe I'm controlling the condition, or maybe I'm falling into that victim mentality role. But understand, you can still be in the empowerment position and still speak your voice. There is a difference here. If you can get to the point of recognition that they are playing a role for you, that everything's happening for you out of a love. If you come from a point of loving acceptance, unconditional love, you're in a vibration of love, which means whatever you speak, whatever you're guided to say, always be for the highest good. So you might come to a point where you say, this is not something I prefer. You can take action. So we're not saying, okay, if something happens that's can be perceived as very traumatic, just to be accepted, be like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? You can actually take action, and take action could mean you speaking your voice. It could actually be from a point of love, removing yourself from that situation. So that's a part of the process too. It's not just doing the shadow work, but taking inspired action. But if you can do that process work, the shadow work, you will know that whatever action you take, you're doing it out of love for yourself, love for all others. So it's different to taking action out of fear. If you could do the process work, you're taking action out of love. So yes, so for those of you who might be in certain conditions and you feel like, okay, I just have to stay in a situation and process it, you might get to the point where you process and then you'd be like, I love myself too much. I'm at the point of love. So now I have felt inspired out of love to remove myself from that experience. And that is okay. It's part of your path. And you'll find when you do these kind of action steps, you actually feel more empowered. And that is the rise of the divine feminine in action. So that's just what I like to put in there in relation to what Max said.
Yeah, I'm going to thank you, Kimberly. I'm going to visually show that, because what you're talking about is a boundary. You're creating a balance within you, that you are putting yourself first. Okay. So one of the things, because I get confused with boundary, defending, making somebody wrong, judgment, especially when you're new to it. So if you look at Gaia on Earth, there's an electromagnetic field around the Earth. Earth doesn't just get asteroids hitting us all the time. We have a field around it deflecting the asteroids, so we can create a balanced and harmonious space. And so that is what Kimberly is talking about. And so, yes, there is another piece to it. There's always pieces to it. There's so many layers to this. Anyways, thank you all for being here. Max, when's the next date for, is it the end of May?
It's the 30th.
It's the 30th.
May 30th.
Okay. So May 30th, again, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be posting this on our Facebook pages or wherever everyone posts to communicate with their Lightworker team out there. And so until next time, thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you for coming in. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks for watching.